Hey guys, Brian Hilliard here, author of the best-selling book, Networking Like a Pro, and I am fired up here today because we are joined by Hattie Volecker. She's actually out in the UK. And Hattie, thanks so much for jumping in with us. I know you've got actually a bunch of things going on. You're getting ready to do your 5-day challenge on freeing your voice. So we really appreciate you being able to stop by and spend some time with us.
My absolute pleasure. Yeah, no, I'm building up for the 5-day challenge, which I ran last time in April, and it went down really, really well to try and get singers and other people to free up and be more confident about what they do when they put themselves out there.
Good. Well, that's kind of what we want to talk about here today, putting yourself out there. You know, we met obviously through LinkedIn. And one of the things that I always say is it's so important to get yourself out to a wider audience and obviously expand your reach and do some of those things. One of the things that I always like to do just before we jump in, because I've got a few questions for you, let's just define our terms for our listeners and viewers. When we talk about getting out there, all right, so real quick, we're talking about podcasts, we're talking about webinars, we're talking about Facebook Lives, we're talking about videos, we're talking about live streams, we're talking about, and it doesn't have to be all of those things, you know, one of the things I personally talk about is how you should streamline your platforms and what you're trying to do. But the idea is that, you know, getting out there is simply a conversation about getting out to a wider audience. And that was one of the things that really attracted me to you, is the fact that one of the things that people have a challenge with is overthinking, is this kind of perfectionist tendency. Talk about that, because I know that there's people listening. They don't have to raise their hand, but we can see them. We know they're there.
It's so true. And I come from that background. I used to be a barrister, which is a lawyer who spends all of their time in court in the UK. And it's that idea of every time we put ourselves out there, and that can be one-to-one. If we're going out networking face-to-face, we can feel like we're putting ourselves out there. But especially when we're putting ourselves out there, we were talking about the difference between Facebook Lives and videos. And that idea of Facebook Lives is where you have to go, okay, I'm just going to do it, and press the button and go for it. And you have to have the confidence to be able to do that, which is why so many people avoid it. Video has a different hurdle in the fact that you can get it, in inverted commas, perfect, or people have a feeling that they can get it perfect. And you can take after take after take. And you talked about that idea of being a 5-take person. I'm probably a 1 or 2-take person. You know, you said a maximum of people to say 5 takes. And if you're not done by then just go with what you've got.
Take one of the 5. Take one of the 5. Yeah.
Exactly. And the idea is when we put ourselves out there, we know we're going to be judged. And I'm not going to tell you you're not going to be judged. You are going to be judged. People judge.
Right.
That's what we do.
Right.
We're going to be judged the way we judge ourselves. People judge us by a different standard. So it's that idea of how do you put yourself out there and go, I'm okay. And you don't try and make it perfect. And you don't try and get to that stage where everything's so perfect, because actually what people connect with is humanity.
Yeah, you know, that's a great point. I mean, you saw Willow the cat just swing on by there for a second. I think that part of it is that people they're going to be judged, but the truth be told, the judgment that comes from others is, first of all, usually not as harsh as what you judge yourself on. That's number one. And then I think the better point, number 2, is that it also is in the minority. So you hear this idea of the silent majority, right? You hear that in US politics all the time. Oh, there's a silent majority. He's actually going to win at the end. No, he's not. But, you know, the idea is that you have this silent majority or something like that of people who are doing stuff. And I think a lot of times when you're doing video, there's this tendency to think that there's a therapist, there's a psychology term for that. So when somebody says something bad, and blah, 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 and you overstate that in your head to think that that's the majority, when actually the people who are not saying anything all like it, but you don't know that, it's a silent majority, if that makes sense. So it's almost like the opposite. It's like the vocal minority versus the silent majority. And in a lot of times, I've personally found, I mean, you tell me, when I do a video that people actually like, I will find people, they'll put some comments and stuff on there. And then the other thing is, though, people will be like, hey, I got a client the other day who's like, I've been watching your stuff. I'm like, who is this guy? He's a good guy. His name is Philip. He's out in Vancouver. And I'm like, he's like, I was watching your stuff. And he's like, I liked it. I'm like, no disrespect to Philip. I'd never heard of him in my life. I like him now. I mean, no disrespect. So if he's listening or watching, no disrespect. I just didn't know that he existed. But when we got a chance to talk, it was really nice, and to be able to see that. So I think I guess that point there is that there is a lot of overthinking that can take place that can hold people back, and we would argue erroneously.
Yeah, and exactly. So you take judgment, as most people do, as negative.
Right.
You look at the dictionary, it is negative. But actually, people make positive judgments too. They are judging you, but that doesn't mean negatively. And so often we want to control that. And we use perfectionism to try and control other people's judgment. But the truth is, we can't control other people's judgment. We can influence it, but we can't control it. And actually, the more we try and control it, the more that overthinking kicks in. And we think, well, I should do this, and I've got to do that. And I did that. I'm so annoyed that I did that. And then you get caught up with what you're about to do and what you have done, and you're not in the moment. And I always say, you can't connect with people if you're not in the moment, because your best chance is they're in the moment, you're in the moment. That's where you connect. And that depends on whether they're in the moment. And the other thing, and we'll come on to this later when we talk about my tips for this, is that the idea that we connect with people in a human way, and we connect with people when we are in the moment and we are thinking about what we're doing and what we want to give to these people, not what they think of us. When we start thinking about what they think of us, we start to overthink and try and control.
Great point, Heidi, because I think a lot of times when you're talking about this idea of the perfectionism, when you start talking about this idea of, controlling, I think a lot of people, they're coming at it there's a false premise, in my opinion, my personal opinion, there's a false premise that people buy into when it comes to getting out there in video. And it's quite simply this, that I have to be the best, most perfect, not necessarily over the top, but best, most perfect, person. I have to be Darren Hardy. All right. And, Darren Hardy looks like he's 45, and he's looked like that for 20 years, and it's like, I have to be Darren Hardy, a Success Magazine founder or editor. And it's like, I need to be Darren Hardy. And I like Darren. I have no problems with Darren. But he I need to be Darren Hardy, or I need to be, Tony Robbins is another example, and it's like, I need to be this type, and you don't. What you need to do is be the best version of yourself. And when you're able to do that on a consistent basis, then you're able to be successful. All right, let's jump into my second question, and we get into some of your tips, which is being successful in doing videos. And that might include point number one, which is getting past some of this perfectionistic tendencies that people have. So dive right in. And I don't know if you've got 2 or 3, maybe you have 4 or 5, doesn't matter to me. Dive right in. What is it you got? And we'll go from there.
So I have 3 tips, but before we move on to that, great myth quote. So there's a quote, be yourself, everyone else is taken. And it's often attributed to Oscar Wilde. It wasn't. I go one better than that. Be yourself. You'll only ever be second best at being someone else. Right. And it's like, be yourself. You'll discover that people love your true self. There is gold within all of us, and there's just all this overthinking and trying to be someone else that gets in the way. So my 3 tips are, first, focus on your material.
Okay.
So when you're sitting there, whether you're doing video or Facebook Live, think about what it is, the message. What message do you want to give to your audience? Because to the teachers and tutors you had in school or college, the ones who were the ones you connected with most, the ones you were most interested by, were the ones who were most interested in their own material, the ones who were focusing on the material, not discipline. They really had that real commitment to the material. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I would just say, I might even call that passion. What do you think about that? They have a passion for what they're doing? Absolutely. And when I talk with singers about this, and I take them back to their material, which for them is their song, and I say, if the song happens to be, I work with a lot of opera singers and classical singers, and if the song happens to be in German, I say, go find out what those words really mean. Find out what they're trying to say. And so often they come back and go, this is such a beautiful song. I hadn't realized the nuances that were going on there. And we can do that with our message. So my message is all about being yourself and being comfortable being yourself in front of the camera or in front of an audience. You have messages that and I see you're passionate about your messages. And when you focus on that, the passion comes up and the mirror neurons start firing, and we start connecting with the people opposite us, whether they're being lens or otherwise.
And it's almost like, and you correct me on this if I'm wrong, but it's almost like when you do that, you don't have time to be nervous. You don't have time to overthink. You don't have time to get all, scarce and perfection-y and negative self-talk. You don't have time for all of that, because what you're doing eclipses, just like you have, I forget which one's which, the solar eclipse, I think is what I'm talking about, but it eclipses what it is that you're trying to do. All right, that's a great first step. So be yourself, and being able to focus on either the passion or focus on the content, make sure that you're really jumping in there. Okay, that's the first one. What do you got for us for number 2?
The second one is focus on your audience. And so often when people are panicking, they don't want to think about their audience. If it's live, they won't look at their audience. So many public speakers are taught to speak above the heads. And I think, no. Don't speak above the heads. They are people, and they come with their own day. So they may have had a really bad day. They may have had a wonderful day. They may have spoken to a relation they haven't spoken to in years. They may have had an argument with their kids or their partner. When they turn up, they are people. And if you think about them and what they want from you, so they arrive, they sit down, and if it's singing, they want a nice time. If it's a lecture or a talk or a webinar or a podcast, what do your audience want? What, as you set out the terms, you were thinking about what your audience wants to get from this exchange, and how do you meet that need? And when you, again, like you said, with the thinking about the material in your passion, when you think about the audience, it removes space and it distracts you from thinking about what they think of you. You're thinking about what they want.
Right. It's a little bit like, I was watching Kevin Costner, the, what was it called? Oh my gosh, For the Love of the Game. And it was baseball. And it was a really good movie. It was on HBO like a couple months ago. And it was one of the things that he was a pitcher, baseball, and he was in the process of throwing a perfect game. And one of the things that, as things start getting, closer and closer to actually throwing a perfect game, you start overthinking a little bit. You start getting into, and the irony is that you actually start doing things that are different than you did previously that actually got you to where you are right now, which is interesting.
And then the golf, they call it the yips, don't they?
Right. That's exactly right. That's a good point. So what happens is it was funny. It was really good. He says, all right, he said, clear the mechanism. So he's getting ready to go pitch, like he's getting ready to pitch. He's like, okay, clear the mechanism. And the way the cinematography worked is that it would go whoosh, and it would focus. And I think a lot of people, when they're going out and trying to clear this kind of negative self-talk, I think a lot of people, to the point that you made before, forget about the judgment. Let's just put that, I call that in the parking lot, right? We got to get that out of there. And then secondly, focus on your information and what you're going to put out there, right? And then I love your second point, which is, and then focus on the audience. What are they looking to get? How is it that you can be of service? You didn't say this, but the implication is, how is it that you can be of service to them? And how is it that you can, my girlfriend's daughter likes to talk about showing up. How can you show up today, tonight, right now on this video, so that people are able to connect with you in a way that Philip from Vancouver, which by the way, is supposed to be a beautiful part of the country. Vancouver, they say that's the place that you go and you don't come back, because it's so nice that people just live there. So you bring your passport, bring all your papers, bring your computer, your laptop, Airbnb the house, get all of your affairs in order, and then you go to Vancouver, because you might not come back, is the understanding.
That was wonderful.
Anyway, that is good stuff. Okay, so that's tip number 2. What do we got for number 3? This is good stuff.
So you may be able to hear my dog yipping in the background. That your cat came in earlier. So if there's some yipping, that's my dog, and he's not got the yips.
Not a problem.
Tip number three is turn it back on yourself, but in a different way.
Okay.
Work out where you're at, because often we try and ignore the nerves. We try and push them away, push them down, pretend they're not there. But actually, nerves are okay. Nerves are a reality. I had a client once and she talked about being nervous and she didn't want the audience to see that she was nervous. And I said, okay, how many people do you think put themselves out there and
right.
nervous? And she was like, well, nobody. So I said, so nerves are totally understandable.
Right.
You're not an idiot. You're not pathetic. You're not unprofessional for feeling nervous.
Right.
I feel nervous.
Right. Right.
You know, every time I put myself out there, I'm excited. But there's a little bit of, I hope this goes well.
Right.
It doesn't, but yeah, let's focus on the excitement rather than the nerves. And
right.
offer ourselves some compassion and it's okay. It's okay to feel this way. You don't have to pretend you're amazing. And set in with a wonderful Alexander technique lady taught me, BBC. So we have the BBC obviously in the UK.
Right.
This,
right.
Breath, work out where your breath is. Because usually the more nervous you get, the higher up the breath gets.
Good.
And just let go. Balance, where are your feet? How are you balanced? Even if you're sitting down, how are you balanced in the chair? What's going on with your limbs? How are you feeling in yourself? And the third one is C, but it's actually S-E-E. It's check in with your senses. Because often the more nervous we get, the smaller our world becomes because we shut from what's around us.
Right.
And that whole idea of, even if you're not doing this live, even if you're doing this to a camera, where are you? What are you feeling? What can you see? What can you hear? Check in that you are really connected, because that's how, even when we're looking at the little black dot on the laptop or the webcam or whatever it is, it's like, be there, be in the now, be okay with having nerves, be okay with where you're at. There's a wonderful joke where a driver pulls over and he winds down the window and he says, excuse me, can you tell me the way to Tipperary? And the reply comes, well, if I were you, I wouldn't be starting from here.
Right. And
the whole point of coaching, as you know, is whatever happens, we're starting from here. And unless we acknowledge that here's where we're starting, we can end up in the wrong place.
Right. No, that's really good. You know, one of the things that I also do is I talk a little bit about this idea of having a game plan going into it. You know what I mean? So like if I'm doing a video, I take a few minutes and put together a little bit of an idea of obviously what you want to talk about, right? But also in the terms of how you want to be able to say it, like some different stories, or maybe, you know, having an idea. I'll tell you what really has worked for me in general is having a structure where I go into the video and I do my regular introduction, you know, hey, this is Brian Hilliard, author of this. Then I go into what I'm fired up about, which is the actual title. Then I might go into a little bit about the teaching. Then I might go into a close and, you know, join our, visit our website, you know, whatever, a close. Okay. And what I have found is when I have a little bit of that structure, that then it becomes easier to, less nerve-wracking, to be able to then say, all right, well, let's do this teaching point or points inside of that. So that might be, you know, one of the things that people who are listening are like, boy, you know, how can I not overthink? How can I be more successful? You know, Hattie's telling me I need to do these 3 things, which are all fine as well. And something else you might want to think about is have yourself a plan. You know what I mean? Get yourself a little bit of a structure that you feel good about and you feel comfortable with. Don't get into like robot mode, but have a structure that you feel good about and that you feel comfortable with, and then go from there.
Absolutely. And it's that idea of the difference between having a script. And having a script often causes us to overthink, because it's like, where am I?
Right.
Have I missed anything? What have I done? Right. So I say no to the script.
No to the script.
Have clothes pegs on a line. Points that you want to hit. I want to make sure I cover that. I want to make sure I cover that. I want to make sure I cover that. And then you're just going, and if you go off on a tangent, it's okay, because you've just got to come back to that clothes peg.
That's exactly right. You know, that tangent point is a really good point, because I think a lot of times you mentioned about I think you mentioned about being natural and the connection and coming through and stuff like that. That's how people talk.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so that's how people talk. And you know, there's this another false premise that you have to be like an actor, you know, and you have to nail your lines. You know, one of the things that I always tell people is, if you actually look at actors, first of all, I don't think we give those guys enough, and girls, women, enough credit for, like, I've seen bad acting, and we're so used to seeing good acting. You're so used to seeing good acting on television that you realize, you forget that there's a lot of people who are not very good at it. And the difference is that little bit of, it's the body language, it's the inflection, it is really hard to do something for a 17th take and make it look natural, like it was the first time and it's spontaneous. Now, the good news is, right? Now, the good news is that as service practitioners, we don't have to make it, we're not going to be, we're watching Modern Love on Amazon, which was excellent. It was a series.
Oh, brilliant.
Really.
I've seen it. It's absolutely.
Yeah, you've seen that?
Mm.
Wow. And the big reveal at the end, which I won't say, but it was really good. We just saw that. We finished it up last night. Anyway, but it's really hard to do that. Now, fortunately, we don't have to be on Moulin Rouge. We're not Nicole Kidman, and we're not, I think it's Josh something. But anyway, we don't have to do that. All we have to do is we have to come across as credible, competent, confident, and to the degree that there's some nerves and stuff like that, that's perfectly natural. But I love all of that. So tell us before we get, I want to make one more point, but tell us real quick. You came from a background of being a musician. You then went to field of law, barista, and no, damn it, what is the word again?
Barrister.
Barrister. All right. Anyway, inside joke to myself. I was thinking to get that right and I messed it up. But you came from a world of musician, then it was a barrister, then you're obviously doing coaching and stuff now. Talk to us on how that journey was. Give us a quick rundown in terms of how you got to where you are.
So I started off in my teen years. I was very much a singer. I love singing, and I thought that would be a big part of my life. And then I had this massive crisis with my voice, and I couldn't. Ladies' voices break when they're about 19, 20, late teens. People don't think women's voices break, but they do. And my voice became really big, and it stopped working in the way I wanted it to work. So my life rejigged, and then I ended up, and I'm not quite sure how I ended up being a barrister, because I never thought I was clever enough to be a lawyer of any variety. And I thought, well, I'll give it a go. And I spent 10 years as a family law barrister, so in court doing work with family law. And it's a really good way of getting under the bonnet with people, because as a lawyer who is doing cross-examination and examination all the time, you're looking to people's underlying motives. You're trying to meet the judge's expectations. You're trying to get under the hood of your opposition and what arguments they might be. So there's a lot of psychology around that.
Right.
Yeah. And that's really played into, then because I became ill, I was under a lot of stress and I became ill. And then as I was retraining to be a life coach, I was working with singers at an international summer music school. And it became so obvious that when people put themselves out there, you can see what they're thinking. And I thought, if I could change what they're thinking about themselves. And you talked about actors earlier on. And yeah, absolutely. Kudos to the actors. And it's very like singing, because for me, to be a really good actor and to be a really good singer, you don't just know your lines. You know your lines so well, you're not actually having to think about your lines.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right, because that gets into the old idea of, conscious competence versus unconscious competence. And, there's a few things that are very hard to do in this life. It is very hard to go in basketball, to go 1 for 12 throughout the entire game and take the game-winning shot with the game on the line. That's very hard to do. Another thing that's very hard to do is, know your lines so well, have a delivery nailed down so well that it looks like it's the first time you've done it. I always love watching, just a little tangent. You know what's really interesting for me? I love watching actors, like if it's a character in a role, I love watching actors act like they can't act.
Yeah.
Like, so
like singers acting
really,
like they can't sing, totally.
it's really interesting. So the character is going and acting, and this is an actor who's top 1% in all likelihood in the world. And they're acting like...
And I think the real key is when the lines, you don't know the lines just verbatim, like by rote. You know them emotionally. You know why that word is there. And you know why the next word comes there. Because in singing, often you have a repetition. So, I love you, 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 possibly in a foreign language, said 6 times. But each time, that character has gone on a journey. First time they say, I love you in one way, and then maybe they're questioning it. And then maybe they come to a conclusion. And it's knowing the emotional journey. It's a bit like having the pegs on the washing line. Know the emotional journey. Then when you go off on tangents, they're not tangents, they're interesting sort of byways that bring humanity and authenticity and excitement and passion to everything you do.
That is absolutely right. That is absolutely right. Good stuff. All right, last point. Let's talk about mindset. Let's talk about self-talk. I think a lot of times when what gets people held back is the idea of they just get out of their, they're getting in their own way. You're obviously helping them get out of it, but they're getting in their own way. Talk to us about mindset and kind of what we need to be thinking about if we're trying to, maybe you have somebody listening now who's like, you know what, listen, I know video is a way to go, or I know audio is the way to go, or I know I need to get out there more with a podcast or a webinar or, a live. What would you kind of articulate to them from a mindset standpoint and maybe a self-talk? What would you kind of share with these guys?
It's that idea of going back to perfectionism. Nobody connects with perfect. Nobody connects truly with perfect, because it's a bit like when you watch a really good actor, there's something vulnerable and authentic, and they're putting everything into this. And it's that idea of being kind to yourself, being kind to play, because the harder we are on ourselves, the more the self-talk comes. And then when we are hard, and this is more Brené Brown stuff, the harder we are on ourselves, the more vulnerable we feel, and the more armor we put on, and the more we put off stuff. And perfectionism is a form of armor, because if I'm perfect, then nobody can criticize me. Well, they won't connect with you either. It's how do you take off the armor, go out and be yourself and be human? Because as soon as we start putting on armor, we just notice more of our vulnerabilities. If you think about the old knights in England, medieval knights, they started way back when with maybe just a leather breastplate. Then it was a leather breastplate, and then they made it metal, and then they added things. And every time they added something, it made them aware of their vulnerabilities. So they added a bit more armor. And so by the time they were finished, they were in full like metal-faced fronts with chainmail in all the gaps, and they had to be literally winched on a horse. And if they had that horse, they were dead. There was no way they could be back on that horse. And this is what we do. As soon as we start questioning our own ability, as soon as we start going, I need to be perfect, we put things off, because it's easier to fail tomorrow than today. We start and we start questioning, and we start challenging ourselves. If we go in and go, that was good, that was nice, I connected, and then you'll start having that feedback. And people say a lot about me that what they like is my authenticity, and I laugh at myself, and we laugh together in sessions, because it's okay. We are all human. There's nobody out there who is not human. And it's, I would say, be kind to yourself is the biggest thing I would say, because other people are much kinder than you think they are.
Right. And I think that's another good point. The biggest critic is usually the one that we give to ourselves. And I think, you talk about that perfectionism. Perfectionism, in my opinion, is the modern day equivalent to throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Because the more you actually do that, the more you actually do that, the less you actually become where you're trying to go. And it's this idea, you, I think, said it great, which was the more you become that perfectionist type person, the less you're able to connect, which actually becomes counterproductive in what you're trying to accomplish. So that is good stuff. Listen, Hattie, we could talk about this all day. This is really, really good stuff. Talk to us again about your 5-day challenge and where people can connect with you, if you don't mind.
Yes, so I'll give you the link to the 5-day challenge so people can take a look at what it is, and you can get it out there. And fundamentally, when you were talking there, it reminded me of what I do in the 5-day challenge. So what I touched on with my 3 points, I do in much more depth in the 5-day challenge, about connecting with your material, connecting with your audience, connecting with yourself. We go into much more depth because fundamentally, you talked about perfectionism. Perfectionism makes us sad.
Right.
And the less fun we have and the less enjoyment we get from our work, the less we will connect. People connect when there's joy. You make other people joyful. You make other people enjoy stuff when you're enjoying it. But if you're hard on yourself and you're always after perfection, then the joy is sucked out of your life. You find it harder to do work. You procrastinate more. You and I go to work and we go, yeah, I'm going to do this today. I'm going to do that today. And it's going to be really good. And so the 5-day challenge is about how you get into that mindset where putting yourself out there doesn't feel as scary. It feels exciting. It's flipping it on its head so you can suck all the joy out of every experience you have. It's particularly for singers, but other people can do it as well. But the idea is for singers because we feel so vulnerable when we sing. How do we go out and feel more resilient? How do we go out and feel more our best and most fabulous self? So that's what the 5-day challenge is all about.
That is awesome. And you talk about perfectionism sucking out the joy. You know, the Bible says that the wages of sin are death, and that the fruit of the Spirit actually is joy, kindness, gentleness. I don't know if passion's on there, but joy, kindness, all of those things. And when you're able to find that energy and find that passion and tap into it without having to feel like that you're being rooted in, you know, continuing with the biblical analogy, the flesh and all these different things that you're thinking that you need to think, then what you find is a freeing of yourself and a freeing of yourself to be who you actually are and to have that be in line with who it is that can see you. So I'm totally with you on that. That is a great point. Good idea. That is some really, really good stuff. Do you have a website or something like that where people can jump on?
Absolutely. My website's findyourtruevoice.co.uk, and you can find out all about all the work I do on there.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, listen, guys, that is Hattie Volecker. I apologize. Hattie, Hattie Volecker. And she is coming to us, like I said, from the UK. Thank you so much for being able to spend some time with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me here. I've really enjoyed my time.
Awesome.